This one's wife. Panic attack. They're getting worse. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. There is one thing, above all else, that you receive from this channel. Information about the narcissism of this one's wife that you won't get anywhere else. The insight into her behaviour, characteristics, conduct and outlook that is not understood elsewhere. Narcissists experience fear, they experience anxiety and also panic. This one's wife is seized by panic from time to time. It comes out of nowhere and grips her, causing blind panic, an awful sensation, a sensation that her world is about to collapse, and she doesn't know why. And these panic attacks will be getting worse. Even though the narcissist may present with an all-consuming confidence, the swagger of a champion, it doesn't mean, especially in relation to the mid-range narcissist, that they are free of uncertainty. This uncertainty comes from those threats to control. But there is a further uncertainty that arises with regard to the disconnect that the narcissist has from the majority reality that you see. It is a hallmark of the narcissist that, in effect, they are deluded, that they see themselves as far superior to those around them, and invariably not based upon anything to support that. They believe that they are the best, the most, the top, but there's nothing to support that. We've seen this repeatedly with this one's wife. She believes that she's a brilliant writer, and yet the content of the Bench of Stench was awful. She thinks she is a prolific and insightful deliverer of speeches, whereas she's boring, sending glass eyes to sleep and providing a tsunami of beige word salad. She thinks that the clothing that she wears causes her to look like a fashion icon, whereas invariably she looks like a complete mess. I've regularly explained that this is a consequence of the distortion field of her narcissism, which causes her to believe that she's better and more than she actually is. And this is particularly prevalent in relation to the mid-range narcissist that is this one's wife, and means that she also suffers from something more than other narcissists, which results in this panic. You'll be familiar with my categorization of narcissists between lesser, mid-range, greater, and ultra. The lesser narcissist operates like any narcissist in a delusional state. The lesser narcissist exists in a bubble, convinced of his or her good looks or innate strength or irresistible sexiness. They believe that everybody likes them. They think if you don't, then you must be an idiot and you're not worth bothering with. They believe themselves to be great at sport or writing or whatever hobby, and if they don't win or receive an accolade, well, the game was fixed, the paint was the wrong sort, or the judges are retarded. After all, if you can't see that this lesser narcissist is a swaggering champion, well, they must need their head seeing to, yes? The lesser narcissist cruises through life doing what he or she wants, taking whatever they want, behaving as they please, and nobody is allowed to stop or interfere with this God-given right. Now, whilst that mentality is prevalent in all narcissists, it is especially evident in respect of the lesser, where they are completely oblivious to their shortcomings. That bloated beer belly just shows a certain joie de vivre. Going bald is a sign of virility. Wearing the same jacket that they always wear is simply classic attire. Their narcissism enables them to maintain their perceived superiority, when in actual fact, they haven't got any whatsoever. They simply do not see their failings, their inadequacies, or their failures. In effect, they escape culpability, maintaining superiority, gathering the fuel and barreling through life, wreaking havoc all around and never suffering consequences. they operate in an aggressive fashion. That is one of the hallmarks of the lesser. What about the greater narcissist? Well, there's no doubting that the greater is able to point to substance to support the bold pronouncements. Look at the money, the high status, the career, the successful public life, the adoring crowds, the power that they wield. The records made, the books sold, the art created, the countries invaded, the factories opened, the gadgets invented, and the elections won. From captain of industry, Olympic champion, pop star, politician, royal, leader, spin dog to fixer, striving executive, acclaimed actor, fated artist, through to hundreds of other positions and roles, the greater populates the higher echelons of achievement. His or her narcissism has enabled such an ascent. Lacking remorse, conscience, driven by the desire to be the best, a total belief in one's ability, a sense of entitlement, and operating with absolute expediency. It's little wonder that many greater narcissists get into these positions. Is there then delusion with the greater, given the fact that they are able often to point to the substance of competence and ability? Well, there is, because it exists in the form of embellishment and exaggeration, because they are always driven to make themselves sound fantastic, sound better than they actually are. The individual may be popular, but he sees that he is immensely popular because the narcissism demands that. The narcissism enabled that narcissist to scale the heights of political power to begin with, and then feeds it with this swollen grandiosity to enable the narcissist to stay there and want more and more, because non sufficit orbit terrarum. But what of the mid-range narcissist, such as this one's wife? He or she can certainly achieve, not on the scale of the greater narcissist, but beyond the lesser. A mid-range narcissist can secure success, good jobs, excellent incomes, academic achievements, sporting excellence, and so forth. They can be well liked by the community, the good old facade at work, and thus become convinced of their own innate goodness and brilliance. However, there is such a thing as the reality gap, and this is what this one's wife suffers from. You see, the lesser narcissist's perceived superiority is based on aggressive provocation, albeit in a rudimentary and base manner. The greater superiority is also based on a form of aggressive provocation, but it is far more streamlined, refined, and sophisticated. Mid-range narcissists, their perceived superiority has its foundation placed on passive provocation. This is achieved through silent treatments, envious smearing, the office politicking, the pity plays, the PR puff pieces, the puffing themselves up and the putting down of others. The consequence of this, in respect of someone like this one's wife, is that this passive defensive superiority, as opposed to the driving, thrusting, aggressive superiority of the other two schools, results in the mid-range narcissist suffering something called a periodic reality gap. This one's wife is afflicted by episodic instances of a detachment between her narcissistic perspective and the reality that everybody else sees. Most of the time, she is enmeshed in her delusion, but she truly believes that she's fantastic, that she believes that the outfit looks really good on her, that her speech is really interesting. But there are instances where she experiences that reality gap. Someone like this one's wife will occasionally get a glimpse of what she actually is, as opposed to what she wants to be. For instance, the mid-range narcissist suddenly gets a fleeting glimpse that he's a middle manager salary man, and he isn't on the fast track to the board. Whereas the lesser sees he's holding a semi-skilled position on the factory floor, He either sees that as what's best for him, and he wouldn't want to be a white-collar wanker, or he believes he's never made it to management because the existing managers are cocksuckers who are clueless and have no idea how to run a company. The greater is either at the board already or very much on his way. But the mid-range narcissist, once believing he was destined for that executive position, has a sudden chilling recognition that he is not. He once believed he brought influence to bear beyond his current status because he was talented and just ripe for promotion, and then suddenly out of nowhere there is a reminder that that is not the case. This one's wife suffers from this from time to time because there is this gulf between what she thinks she is and what she actually is. As I explained, most of the time, the narcissism bridges that gap so she doesn't see it. It's like an illusion, a computer-generated illusion that wraps around her, so she isn't aware of all of those shortcomings. But every so often, because of this mid-range status that she has, it's like the power gets switched off for a brief moment, and all of a sudden the illusion that was generated by the computer goes, and she is given a stark reminder of the fact that she isn't as attractive as she believes herself to be, that she isn't as competent as she thinks she is, nor popular. This then results in panic. The shortfall between what the mid-range narcissist wants to be and believes him or herself to be, and what they actually are, then manifests as this crushing blow to the mid-range narcissist. The narcissism scrambles to reinstate the illusion, to dispel what has happened, but it's too late. The narcissist doesn't accept what they see, but they see it nevertheless, and this results in a panic attack for that mid-range narcissist. It comes out of nowhere, a sudden fountaining of mediocrity which surges up, unexpected and unwelcome. Naturally, this awful reminder that they are not what they think they are acts as a threat to the narcissist's control, and the narcissism immediately responds, seeking to cause the narcissist to escape this reality gap by resulting in complaining, raging, sulking, smearing, thus asserting control over others and drawing fuel to banish this sudden reminder that they are nowhere near as special as what they believe themselves to be. Some of you might have seen a program called Silo, where basically there's an image of a toxic world generated, which then glitches and shows one which apparently isn't an awful world. Well, in respect of this one's wife, the awfulness of her behaviour, the failure to achieve, her mediocrity, her beigeness, ordinarily the narcissism acts as an illusion to obscure and hide all of that. So she breezes through life, labouring under the misapprehension and delusion that she's truly beautiful, talented, interesting and popular. When she's reminded that she isn't popular, the narcissism just dismisses it. They're haters. If someone suggests that she's not beautiful, that's ridiculous. The illusion tells her that she is. So they must be crackers if they operate with such a belief. If they say that she's boring, well, the illusion tells her that she isn't, so they're clearly envious. But when the gap becomes stretched, as it does with this one's wife, because she's failing over and over again, this taxes the narcissism. Imagine, if you've got a narcissist who is good at their job, is liked by a lot of people, but they're not as physically attractive as they think they are. That's only really one aspect that the narcissism has to deal with. But for this one's wife, she isn't as popular as she thinks she is, she isn't as attractive as she thinks she is, she isn't as successful as she thinks she is, she isn't as wealthy as she thinks she ought to be. There are so many shortfalls across so many facets of her life. It's taxing her narcissism. And this is only increasing. The regular reports about her failures, the many instances and criticisms as more and more people start to realise what she is, give the narcissist enough rope. This means that the job of the narcissism becomes all the harder for it to try and keep that illusion in place. And that means that these episodic reality gaps that this one's wife will experience become more frequent, because the narcissism is being asked to do more and more and more. And therefore, the drain on its battery, if you look at it that way, is such that it can't keep up with it. And thus, she will get more and more glimpses of the shortfall between what she thinks she is and what she actually is. And when she sees this, there isn't acceptance, but it generates this panic in her. Who is that? I don't recognize him. Is that really me? And as a consequence of that, she's gripped by this terror, this sudden realization that could that actually be what's going on? Confusion. No, I don't recognize that. What is this? This invariably occurs in moments when she isn't around anybody, when the fuel levels are not at the highest they ought to be. As a consequence, therefore, that the illusionary capacity of her narcissism is not only stretched by the demands being made upon it, but also the fact that the fuel levels aren't as high. This isn't a fuel crisis, that is something separate. But it's a little bit like, imagine your house and your electricity supply. So you have the lights on and your heating comes from the electricity, your underfloor heating, for example, your television, your refrigerator, your fridge freezer, you might cook with electricity. And then everybody's in the house. And so many appliances are on and many demands are being made. And then there isn't enough electricity coming into the house as a consequence of a problem with the grid. Thus, things start to switch off. Things don't work. It's like that for this one's wife. The supply of electricity coming into her fuel, can drop, combined with the ever-increasing demand on that electricity supply as a consequence of the necessity of maintaining the illusion in the face of her many failings. The more that she tries to succeed, and the more that she fails, the more that she places a demand upon her narcissism. And this results in more of these reality gaps being experienced, and the panic that is associated with them. It is a thoroughly unpleasant occurrence for the narcissist, and something you may not have been aware of, and that this one's wife will experience because she is a narcissist. She's a mid-range narcissist, and she is finding that she is failing more and more and more, which is placing more and more demands upon her narcissism, resulting in it not being able to do its job as effectively as it once did. I've said on many occasions, her narcissism was brilliant at getting her into this position, but is not fit for purpose for keeping her there. And one of the consequences of that failure for purpose is this reality gap and the panic attacks that follow thereafter. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.